Good morning, dear students. Today we are doing a very simple poem. It's actually a sonnet by William Shakespeare. And you have studied sonnets. You know what is a sonnet, what are the different types of sonnets, isn't it? You know all these things. Yet to begin with, I will explain to you what is a sonnet. And so this sonnet that we are going to study is sonnet number 18. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? It is a sonnet by William Shakespeare. William Shakespeare, he had written 37 plays and 154 sonnets. And you know that he is always remembered as a great dramatist. He lived and wrote during the 16th century, but he is still alive even today. Even now, his dramas are enacted all over the world. Even now, research work is going on, Shakespeare. And so critics say that Shakespeare dead is more alive than Shakespeare alive. And so we all know him as a great dramatist. But remember, he is also a good sonneteer. He had written 154 sonnets. Do you know when he attempted writing sonnets? His sonnets were published between 1608 and 1609. It was the time when the Great Plague affected England and the theatres were closed. And when the theatres were closed, Shakespeare started writing sonnets. And he had written 154 sonnets in total. And then what is a sonnet? A 14-lined poem is called a sonnet. Understood? Sonnet is a poem in 14 lines. And this sonnet, actually, two types of sonnets are there. Petrarchan sonnet and Shakespearean sonnet. And I'm sure that you know that this is the sonnet form is introduced to English by White and Surrey. And then you have the Petrarchan sonnet. Have you studied Petrarchan sonnet? Petrarchan sonnet. Both the Petrarchan and the Shakespearean sonnets, both of them have 14 lines. Then what is the difference? The structure is different. That is, in Petrarchan sonnet, you have two 4-lined stanzas and followed by two 3-lined stanzas. It is called an octave and a sestet. And so, in the Petrarchan sonnet, you have the 8 plus 6 structure. 8 plus 6, 14. That is two 4-lined stanzas followed by two 3-lined stanzas. In Shakespearean sonnet, you have 3 quatrains followed by a concluding couplet. What is a quatrain? 4-lined. A 4-lined stanza is called a quatrain. How many 4-lined stanzas are there? 3 4-lined stanzas. 3 into 4, 12. Plus couplet 2, 14 lines. Understood? And so, the Petrarchan sonnet, it has an octave followed by a sestet. But the Shakespearean sonnet, you have 3 quatrains followed by a concluding couplet. And the Petrarchan sonnets, it is usually addressed to a woman. But the Shakespearean sonnet, some of them are addressed to a woman and others to a young man. And then in Shakespeare, from sonnet number 1 to sonnet number 126. These sonnets are addressed to a young man. We don't know who the young man is. Our critics are of different opinion, and some say that it is the Earl of Southampton. But Shakespeare doesn't explain who the young man is. He simply had said that poems 1 to 126, they are addressed to a young man. And critics even find out it's not mere friendship. And critics say that some homoerotic relationship exists between Shakespeare and this young man. And then sonnet number 127 to 154, it is addressed to a dark lady. And we don't know who is the dark lady. Understood? He had written altogether 154 sonnets. And 1 to 126, it is addressed to a young man. And 127 to 154, it is addressed to a dark lady. And so, you have the text with you. Please keep it open. Again, before beginning with this sonnet, remember it is addressed to a young man. You have 3 parts actually for this sonnet. In the first session, you can see Shakespeare. He toys with the idea of comparing his beloved to a summer's day, but decides against it since he feels that his beloved is lovelier. And so, what is the first argument that comes in the sonnet? Shakespeare, he decides to compare his friend, the young man in the sonnet, him to a summer's day. A summer's day is counted to be very beautiful. But the next minute he says that no, my friend is more lovelier than the summer's day. And then he goes on examining the problems with the summer. He says that you cannot say that the summer day is always very beautiful. Because sometimes the summer day, during the summer day, there will be strong winds. And so, because of the strong winds, even the buds of flowers are shattered, and the ships are greatly disturbed by the strong winds. And so, you cannot say that always summer days are beautiful. And some summer days are very hot. Some summer days are very dim, cloudy. And so, again, summer is short-lived. Very soon, summer day gives way to autumn. And you know that autumn is the season when the trees will shed their leaves. And not a very beautiful season. And so, Shakespeare says that because of these reasons, I feel that I cannot compare my friend to a summer's day, because my friend is lovelier than the summer's day. A summer's day is unpredictable. Sometimes strong winds are there. Sometimes the day will be very hot. Sometimes it will be cloudy. And however, it very soon gives way to autumn season. And so definitely his lover is lovelier than the summer's day. And so that idea is conveyed as the first argument. And then again in the second part, actually the second argument, he treats time in the second stanza. And it is a very favorite theme with Shakespeare. How time ravages everything. All that is beautiful will fade one day. Whatever beautiful it is, however beautiful it is, it will fade out. See, a beautiful rose. See, by the evening, it will fade out. Beautiful men and women. You know how time destroys their beauty and glamour. And so, the second argument that is treated in the poem is the Shakespeare's concept of time. Is Shakespeare's concept of time. What does he say? Time destroys everything. All that is beautiful will fade one day. The thought of transient beauty is communicated powerfully in the image of summer having short life. And so, a very good example is given. A summer's day is actually very beautiful. But actually what happens on the summer's day? What happens? Very soon the summer's day will fade out. That is here the transience of human life is mentioned. See, I told you that it is a favorite topic with Shakespeare. In another sonnet, sonnet number 116, that sonnet is titled, Let Me Not to the Marriage of True Minds. And it has a subtitle, True Love. Because the poem treats the theme of true love. There also time is presented as a villain. He says that time with its sickle will cut roses from the faces of the people. Okay, that is it. That is, time will destroy youth. Understood? And so, it's a very favorite topic with Shakespeare. In this sonnet also, in the second part, the poet contemplates how time ravages everything. And he also says that whatever that is beautiful will fade one day. The realization that whatever is fair will lose beauty either by chance or by the course of nature. The course of nature inevitably leads to loss of beauty. Inevitable decline awaits everything. Understood? And so, don't think that some beautiful things will remain in this world. No. There is an inevitable, unavoidable decline that is awaiting every living thing. Whatever that has life in it will be destroyed one day. See, it is again, I told you, the same idea is echoed in Shakespeare's sonnet number 116, Let Me Not to the Marriage of True Minds. It talks about true love. But even then, the poet talks about time as a villain, which destroys the youth and the energy of the lovers. And then again, here you are reminded of another poet, John Keats. You know, John Keats, a romantic poet. You have studied John Keats, you have to study La Belle Dame Sans Merci this year itself, isn't it? And so he was a very good romantic poet who died very young, at a very young age, before reaching the age of 26. And he had written plenty of odes, and one ode is Ode to a Grecian Urn. There also the same idea is repeated, that is, art is superior to human life. That is, human life, it is short-lived, but the art will remain as such for a longer period. For example, a painter who makes a beautiful painting, the painting remains for centuries intact, but the painter within a short span of time, he will die and he will disappear from this earth. Isn't it? And so, and again in the Grecian urn, the poet addresses a beautiful urn. And he says that urn is made thousands of years back. But even now, the urn remains in its full beauty, in its perfection. But the man who made the urn, the sculptor who made the urn, he may have lived only for a short span of 50 or 60 years in this earth. And so, who is superior? Art is superior to human life. Man, we think that we are the crown of God's creation. We feel that we are superior to everybody else. But remember, art is superior to us. Whoever we are, whatever we are subject to death and decay. And so in this context, we are reminded of John Keats, who also echoes the same idea.